is going to be a summary. Everyone's coming out of this as workers in the community service sector. We have selected one of these scenarios from Task 2 in CHCLEG003. We've moved over into Task 3 and Task 4, the framework around the project that we need to do. What are the legal and ethical considerations to be compliant? So sometimes when we're in this space, the rights and responsibilities get a little blurry. If someone's got a lower EQ, they will sit in that space of blame, justify, deny, and quit. We only had one agreement that we needed to reach, which was we cannot use the word should. So I would say Shanika's group are furiously working. I better close it. That's great. So they'll join us in 60 seconds. But any questions and answers? Who had fun in the group?
Yes, we had.
Were you able to stay in your lens, or did you find yourself blurring those boundaries a little?
Yeah, we were actually in kind of a boundary because we were in a workers group. So, just being there, we couldn't have done anything about it. We could have we were just talking about that even if we don't know if he's in the dark or not, but still we should support him as a human being, as a worker, as our colleague. So we were just discussing about that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. It's hard, isn't it, when you have to stay inside that lens rather than, oh, well, I want to have a conversation over here about that, or I want to, but we have to see it from the perspective of the group that we were in. And that's difficult, but it also aligns us. We engage with their perspective. Where are people coming from? And it really is helpful as a worker to be able to practice, what's my role here? I like where you were coming from though, Jasmine. That's good.
We also spoke about not getting involved in that situation between Ben's situation and what the HR's job is, and also keeping our eyes and ears open in case we hear anything and reporting what we feel needs to be reported.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also,
right,
Vicky, I thought I was supposed to be in Shanika's group.
Oh, did I? Oh, Cody, there you go.
That's okay. Well, I got by anyway.
We
It's
did
all right.
wait for you for a while, Cody.
You knew I was going to get that wrong.
Never mind.
Cody, you pivoted. Amazing.
Yeah.
I got there.
We were also talking about that we should keep an eye on him, and if he's going through something mentally, or if there's some malicious rumors going around, then which are not correct, and we should report it immediately, or we should put a stop on it, that okay, we are working together. If there is something going on, it's not our place to interfere with the authorities or with the case. Or what we can do, three of them, they are our colleagues, and we should not be biased about anyone. So yeah,
that's
it.
A good perspective to come from. So you were in the worker group.
Yeah, we were in the worker group. Yeah.
How did they go, Rinson? You were definitely on time and organized, and
yes,
everyone contribute.
Everyone contributed. In the beginning we were like lost, so what was the the story, the background, but after narrating, after going through the background, it was, I think if there was no time limit, we could have gone on and on.
That's good. Then you had a rich discussion in your session,
and
very good.
It was very productive one.
Productive, and I think our group was kind of pressure free as well, because we were not under pressure.
Well, there is solidarity in workers and
Just the
Yeah.
solidarity,
Yeah.
but yeah, as Jasmine said, we were not under any pressure from,
Yeah.
you know, like
Take action or
we
do
can't decide on
something.
anything. It's just that we are being in the borderline.
Yeah, you did have a responsibility to not engage in those conversations that can, I guess, fracture a culture, make people anxious about the security. Our clients can often feel that, even if we don't say it, they sense it, especially if you're working in a residential setting as well. There's an energy that comes in, mood, and we call that our psychic. So you want to be able to go to work and feel safe, feel that you would be supported. And I guess your lens over that is, how would I want to be treated if I was in Ben's position? I may not have made that choice, but have I ever made an error of judgment? And how would I like that to play out for me? And then how do we model that behaviour?
And Ruth breathed a sigh of relief and then went off and had that cup of tea.
Because she needed it.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So could we comfortably hear from the client group then, Shanika?
And just to confirm, our group was happy for me to do all the yapping because I've been writing heaps of notes, but everyone's keen to jump in where they see fit. But just for some background, we decided to come from the standpoint collectively. It was very much a group decision that Ben is quite remorseful for what he did, and he is admitting to the wrongdoings. Where should we start? We kind of broke it down into some categories. So he understands that there was a conflict of interest. So he's a barrier for him was that his ability to make impartial decisions was kind of intercepted by the fact that him and Thomas are friends. From there, the concerns of Ben were that he might lose his job. So he's pretty concerned of the loss of employment. He's pretty concerned as well about any disciplinary action that may come his way, as well as the loss of friendship. Sorry, let me just shut my window. My dog is being really loud. Apologies. He had a lot to say too. So where was I? Loss of the friendship with Thomas as well is something that's quite playing on his mind. We kind of assumed that Ben is maybe trying to make friends in the workplace, has made friends with Thomas, and is concerned about losing that friendship. And maybe even when he agreed to copying the client file of Kelly's, he might have done it with that internal knowledge of, I'm doing something wrong here, but I don't know how to say no. So
really
he
trying to impress him and keep the friendship we discussed as well.
Yeah. So we're also worried, he's also worried about the image that is potentially painted of him from the other workers' perspective. So like I think the other group had already mentioned, like potential whispers in the hallways from other staff members, and kind of worrying as well, if he were to lose his job over it, would he then still be able to get a positive reference from the workplace? Obviously he's done this, like this specific incident has gone against him, but up until now he's potentially had a very clean slate, has been really good at his job. Is that going to affect his long-term ability to get employment elsewhere? Other than that, we also said that a barrier could be if he were to remain within the workplace, he's kind of worried that it might stop him from progressing, because potentially, whether it be males or females, they may be worried about him doing similar things to them if he's within their team and causing the same issue to happen again, potentially, is just how he thinks other people may view that. And any ramifications that might come from that. Ben has his brother with him.
Oh, okay.
And his brother's the person who has been supporting him to kind of get legal advice, encourage him to go and see a counsellor as well, and even potentially utilise those internal resources as well for that. What else? We also had kind of his responsibilities as well. So obviously he's quite openly admitting that he is in the wrong. He's done something wrong, and he had that personal bias towards Thomas. He wants to paint a good picture of himself, though, and that remorse and his willingness to improve himself and his work abilities. So he wants to come to the table with kind of some things that he wants to pitch. So if he is to not be involved in further legal action and is to keep his job, he wants to let it be known that he's willing to, at his own cost and in his own time, undergo some short courses. So that's just for some self-improvement, and those short courses would be enhance corporate governance, discrimination and harassment, and workplace health and safety, just to upskill and remind himself of why they're so important and how to maintain them in the workplace. And he'd also like to, for a little while, work from home, just to allow the situation to settle at work and give both Ben and Kelly some time away from him and him similarly away from them. And he also would like to provide a written apology to Kelly, because obviously he has created quite an impact on the case that she had against Thomas with giving Thomas the files.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to add from my group?
I think that was pretty much everything we covered. You did amazing.
That was
Shanika.
really good.
Was succinct, was great advocacy, acknowledging support. Let's hear from management. What do they think about this?
Well, we, as a management, we think that there was a security breach. The files were missing. Ben's work as an HR in the company gave him easy access to the company papers and obviously the photocopy machine. So in this case, I think for getting an immediate action and response, the first thing that we would recommend is getting the security better, making a better security system in the company, and check what the mismanagement is, consult the legal counsel, so that a lot of there isn't a lot of legal risk involved in this again, because they would be helpful in telling us the correct ways to do the investigation or to assess the situation. So it also we discuss about having conversations internally and externally in the company. We also discussed that while this investigation was going on, if Ben was not given the access to the files or keys for the time being, would be better, because we don't want anything to go worse from this situation, because obviously people can talk or poke him or make him down more. So that would be a good thing to do. And obviously Ben has to be treated fairly, because the company's policies says that their rights should be protected. So protecting Ben's right is another thing. And obviously implementing ways to prevent the breach. Obviously, the stakeholders would be worried about the funding and credibility of the company. So we have to keep the investigation non-partial, fair. And there was also points saying that practices, there should be, non-partial practice. Okay, so there should be non-partial ways of handling situations legally when it comes to things like this. So that was one of the legal compliance that was discussed. And when it comes to the ethical compliance, providing training and education, asking the peak bodies to give adequate training and learning classes would be a good measure, so that we know what the company protocols are, procedures are, what the rights are, things like that. And yeah, I think overall what we discussed was that all three of them can work together to make a proper resolution and to prevent further issues concerning Ben and Kelly. So this is what we discussed.
Yeah, I think we also discussed as well our responsibility to make sure that all other employees feel safe to, you know, report and raise issues. You know, we have to make sure that we set an example as a company to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but also make sure that everyone else feels safe. And, you know, this can also be investigated. Our company can be investigated as we essentially failed to provide and protect employees' confidential information. We could face fines. We've got to keep that in mind. I think like either probation or, you know, obviously we have to, that while the investigation's pending, treat Ben fairly, but it's also like we have all the facts to some degree. We probably have all the evidence, so it's kind of, yeah, it's hard to look at the evidence of, you know, him actually going in and copying that file and sharing it around and ignore that, because it is, at the end of the day, it's a major breach of.
And you are the team that are legally responsible. Ultimately, it is you that face the court. It's you that are answerable to funding bodies and that as well. So you must be seen to be doing it, and you must do it.
Yeah, we also spoke about the training, as you mentioned earlier, that everyone who's on the floor or a worker on the staff that should have a proper training and knowing about the legals and policies and
especially HR employees, you know, that should have proper confidentiality training.
And also we need to make sure that every staff has attended the training and signed, just to make sure, because we're not sure that whether Ben has really attended any training to teach him about the company legals.
A bit more information, and I guess that's the investigation. But what if he has attended it and it hasn't stuck, you know? And so here we are. One of the things that I got from each of the groups is that you were all very aware of your responsibilities. I agree with the safety was definitely around there, people feeling comfortable. We need to make sure the documentation of everything we do is there, and that we give definite timelines around we will do this by when. Give it some timelines to lock it in so that it can be measurable. All your ideas are great. I like the respect. I like the professional boundaries that everybody worked inside their lens. And it's hard when I give you an area, you can't go over into that conversation. You have to put that lens on your role from that perspective. In doing that, you're seeing things from everybody's perspective by listening to what that is like. What I want to do is ask the worker group, what do you want and what do you need to feel that you're in an organisation that is acting legally, ethically, that you are feeling safe under workplace health and safety? What do you need and what do you want?
You need justice, otherwise you feel like the workplace is not reliable. So Ben, in other words, whether he does education, whether he has to make a formal apology to Kelly, there has to be some sort of justice happens. I don't know how to describe it, but so that the workplace looks like it's dealt with it responsibly, so that Ben just hasn't got away with it, because otherwise everyone will feel like he just got away with that. That's not fair.
Understand.
So, yeah.
How would you know this, and how would you like to know this? What's your want? So do you need to be given an update on this? Not everything about the investigation, but do you need reassurance from management?
Yes, definitely. I feel like an email or something, or some sort of memo to describe this has been dealt with. We did these actions, and Ben has made a formal apology, and he's prepared to do these things to pay back or recompense what his actions. So that, and he has, and we've also said that he's got boundaries now for this year or something like, for a time limit.
I'm not in the workers.
Yeah.
But doesn't Ben have rights to that confidentiality, that we don't know everything about it? Should we just not know?
But then there's no evidence. We would, as
Well, the
workers,
evidence
feel like we
maybe-
haven't had any. He just got away with it. So we need something to say
Just
that
a
he has
memo
been
saying
dealt
that,
with
yeah.
officially.
And maybe
I don't know
something
how.
something
Yeah.
like the more, I mean, the procedure, the safety procedure in place for this issue, so that, I mean, tighten procedure on to how, I mean, especially the access, confidential document, all these things, so that the announcement in terms of the notice to publish, to to comfort the worker, to feel safe that to work there at the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, to emphasize that the policy in place.
Okay, so you're saying yes, it is good to get some information. However, you need to be compliant around the privacy, the confidentiality. So we would say there has been an incident, we follow due process. We're not talking about what has happened to the worker, but the workers need to get some feedback, some guidance, and then also, if they have questions, what is the policy and procedure and the protocols around how to ask those questions and who to ask those questions, and direct those questions to. So, Michaela, something to add there?
Pardon?
You wanted to add something in there, or did you feel said?
Yeah, I did, but I just said essentially I think something should be put out about the breach in confidential files, and that, like, the company, I don't think necessarily the company needs to say what exactly they have put in place, because it might kind of spark ideas in other people. I don't really know. I'd probably have to put a lot more thought into that than what I've already have. But yeah, I think just like to make employees aware that we would like to do something about it, and we are doing something about it, and we have a timeline for it.
Yes. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Ruth. You don't want to be kept in the dark. And I hear what management is saying. We haven't got the right to be talking about Ben, and nor is it staying inside the policies and procedures and the protocols. Shanika.
Would they do it from the lens of potentially letting everyone know once they've identified maybe where the breaches were, instead of saying that's what happened? Could they just put out an all-company memo to say we've updated our policies and procedures regarding, and then list the specific policy and procedure, and then people can go to that policy and procedure and have a read through it, and it can be updated with any new measures or anything like that, and that way people are getting to understand that there has been new measures put in place, but it's not necessarily naming or shaming or anything like that.
This is the essence of the project, isn't it? You know, identify a policy and procedure, see the gap, make an improvement around it. So is there a gap there, or was it an individual person acting independently? Was there something we need to improve on? And is that training and education? But I do agree, the rumour mill can run rife, and then sometimes if workers don't feel that their questions are being answered, that they're being supported, this could just as easily be us. Not that you would or would not do what Ben has done, but the workers can't really have a conversation with anyone because Ben has not given consent for anyone to discuss this matter. This investigation must be managed fairly because it's still in the investigation stage. However, if we say nothing, it can create another problem for us as well. It can destabilize. People start to feel insecure. Then they'll gather together. People have walked off sites, called in sick. gone off on stress leave because they're filling in the gaps for themselves. So we do need to put something in place. Cody, something to add?
Yeah, can we as workers not just get an email saying that the situation has been dealt with and, like Shanika said, new policy has been put in place to cover that breach of some sort? I can't really put it in words, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good approach. So a memo, all staff get that, like in an email. It's an official and it's a legal document. I think management would want to know that the staff are aware that you're managing it. However, you're not going to go into the details. This is what you have done, and it's a directive for everyone. Give them the link to the policy, relevant policies and procedures, ask for some feedback, and then move on. Jasmine.
Yeah, just to add on, I was thinking that there could be proper meetings or workshops done regarding these kind of situations can be dealt, making kind of a case study within the organization, and once in a year or twice in a year, they should be doing these kind of meetings or workshops to discuss about these policies, if this and this has happened, and what should we do to prevent any issue from going this further. And I think, oh, that's it. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's good.
And sorry, one more thing. And there, as workers, I was thinking about if this has happened to our organization, and we will be quite stressed about that, where should we go if we have to deal with this kind of a situation. If I am in the place of Kelly, and there should be a person, kind of a counselor, which actually, a management should hire some kind of a person that personally, get involved in these kind of sensitive issues. And yeah, so
Good
it
policy.
yeah.
I think First Access has that in place anyway. They
Yeah.
have the whistleblower one as well. So there may or may not be a blurring of how people manage and cope with this around code of conduct. Value space, revisit back to our own contract that we signed, which is our offer of employment and our position description, also a legal document. If Ben applied for the job, let's just walk through Ben's path. He's acknowledged that in the group that worked with Ben, he's acknowledged and accepted responsibility for his part. He's come forward with some suggestions which definitely outline intent to accept responsibility, is concerned that this may damage their reputation with the organisation or stop them from future. We cannot discuss it. So let's say Ben does decide to leave, it's triggering for him, and he just can't find his groove. The outcome is that whatever the outcome is, regardless of the investigation. However, if Ben was applying for a position, he's got to make a decision. Do I leave that job on my resume, or do I just erase that part of it? And then if Ben is looking for a reference from the organisation, the only two things that people will ask, and there's lots of versions of how they ask this, is do they have the skills that they claim they have in their application and their resume? And if you had an opportunity to hire them again, would you? Now, there's lots and lots of different ways to ask those questions. They talk about the skill side of it. It's like, what strengths do they have? And then what weaknesses do they have? And that as well. When we started this, we had someone in our group, in our class, who had gone for an interview, and they with their consent, they shared what that was like. And I was one of their referees. And so the questions that we get asked are things like, everybody finds it easy to talk about strengths, but what do you talk about a weakness? So we have to know ourselves, but if you're a referee for someone, it needs to be legal and ethical, how you respond, but it also needs to be strength-based. But if someone had a serious breach in the workplace, you have a legal and an ethical responsibility to state there was an incident, it was a breach, but you would not be able to talk about it. So it's up to Ben if he decides to put First Access as his place of work and referencing. They're the options Ben has. Ben needs guidance to do that. Completely agree that you need to have a counsellor to work with, Ben, as well as the staff, our employee assistance program, and even members of the board who may be impacted. Many committees and boards are volunteers. So we need to make sure that we're mindful of that. Also think of the size of the community that they're in. Is it a postcode of 2,000 residents? Gosh, that's going to light up very quickly. If it's a city or whatever, do you have to reinvent yourself somewhere? Will the jury, the public jury, make their own decision anyway as it all filters out there? And the reputational damage can be very challenging. Whether it's truthful, what is said or not about Ben, truthful what is said about Thomas or not, truthful what is said about Kelly or not, it can be damaging. So we as an organisation need to be working within our legal and ethical framework. All the workers, I was hearing a lot of maturity and emotional quotient coming out of that group, and also acknowledging that Ben was owning that, which would go a long way towards reconciling that and the approach that management had. But Michaela?
I just have a question. Say if the investigation was complete and there was evidence to prove that, you know, Ben did photocopy the confidential files, and we as a company stood by Ben rather than Kelly, or, you know, took everyone else in the company into consideration, that would be like legally and ethically wrong, and like we could face legal action from that as well.
Yes. So the funding body would want to wade in and expect a resolution. It's about who is the injured party when you're talking about legal and ethical. And then it also talks about who had the responsibility. It is management, no matter what. Even if they're at arm's length and they only hear about it later, they are the ones who sign that contract. So they've got to have that due diligence in place, good reporting mechanisms, but they're at arm's length. The person in charge of it is the CEO or the general manager. Traditionally, this is a very conciliatory group and mature in your approach. There's a lot of needs and wants met, lots of rights and responsibilities. There's a bit of robust thoughts around this. When I assign you to someone else's lens, we have to stay in that lens of their perspective rather than, oh yeah, but if I can't, like if we're sitting as the client, we must view it from there. It's the only way that we as workers can genuinely sit in and say, I use non-judgmental communication, I applied active listening, I had unconditional, compassionate regard. And we must demonstrate that we're doing Diploma of Community Services, every one of us. That's our framework. They're your foundational skills around there. Monique, can I ask you, did you feel that this will help and flow for you with the fourth project?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it will because because there's a breach in that, which was a breach. So yeah, it'll give me some ideas of different ways of looking at it. So yeah, I think it will help.
Yeah, good. I think an organisation that does 360 degrees feedback is also a great organisation. So we need to be able to say something, but we also need the organisation to come back to us. Then we want to be able to say, was that helpful? Did that work? Or was it just 2 ways and that's it, end of? Going back and checking again and giving people an independent person to be able to go to, whether it's external to the company, which EAP, Employee Assistance Program, often is. It may be that if somebody does end up leaving, others may leave as well. There's always that fallout. Management have a really difficult position to sit in here, but their reputational damage is their priority. Securing the funding so that nobody loses their jobs, making that decision around contacting Fair Work. This is the information we've gathered. They may even ask you to bring in an independent mediator for Ben and your discussions. It may go to the commissioner and they book in. So they have conversations with Ben separately, then they have conversations with management. Ben may be able to nominate another worker or two to speak on their behalf. Management need to delegate. Usually it's either the clinical lead, CEO, unless the complaint sits around the CEO and they can't be there. And then usually one member of the board who has that governance legal, so it could be a lawyer who happens to sit on your board. It could be, it's good that Ben had familial support, but the management committee need to have legal advice, ethical advice, and it must be people with those governance skills. So usually that's going to be, in a case like this, someone who has human resource management knowledge and industrial relations knowledge, and an industrial relations legal advisor as well, and take that advice and then follow that advice. But this can damage people. Ben might go, this is all too hard, and I'm not sure how I feel. But we must make sure that we have done everything we possibly can during this. Some organisations will put Ben on full paid butt leave until the investigation is finalised and whatever the outcome is there. Ben may bring in the union if Ben would like to. The union may say we can't assist you with this. It's quite clear on what the legal and ethical. So the Privacy Act has been breached if that is the finding. Ben then, if Ben got sacked without due process, Ben can go on stress leave or unfair dismissal, and the matter will be heard before the courts. And then the courts are going to ask people, like some workers, Ben will think of some that support his perspective, and management might think of someone who will support their perspective as well. And then, of course, Ben being the client, Ben has the right to take any unfair dismissal around it. So mediation is the step before the court process. And where that's still in that civil space, there's often some confusion around, are we in the civil space or are we in the criminal space? It is only in the criminal space if the police, so the civil matter may refer it to public prosecution to investigate that matter if the intent was to damage. But if it's unintentional and the board decide to keep Ben, then Kelly's rights may be part of that. So they'll need to consult the identified person who was the most damaged by this. So unintentional, they may be able to work through, but oftentimes it isn't. So who thinks Ben's going to stay?
No.
Connie?
Yes.
Who thinks the management are going to keep Ben or ask Ben to leave?
I do.
I think the management may keep him, but maybe transfer him to other sector.
I would
or
leave
other
a company
branch.
that kept someone like that.
So would I.
Me too.
I think Millie's idea of transferring it is a good one. He could probably go to another section of the same company, and then he'd be away from all the gossip if he took action to do all the things, training and that sort of stuff.
If after the investigation, if found out if he's unintentionally to do that, to add that, so the company might give you another chance.
Okay.
By this by the accommodation.
You're next, and I'll go to Connie and then Cody.
I think it's also hard because obviously looking at it from the lens of working in the field, we're obviously working to rehabilitate people who have made mistakes. So I think it's also really important to just remember that, like, everyone makes mistakes. Obviously, this was a pretty severe one, but are we willing to just be like, well, we're washing our hands of Ben because he made this mistake? Or is it maybe looked at through like a strike system of if it becomes a reoccurring pattern of events, then that will occur. But just having, I guess, that empathetic lens on it as well. Obviously, it is really tricky because his actions were not great, but like we identified, he may have known that from the start and he may have felt like he had no other option. It's just also food for thought, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're trained in coercion. We're trained around that influence that someone has, and at this stage he has that belief. Thanks, Shanika. Connie, over to you. Something to add? I can see hands up. It's great.
Yeah, my view is if the company decide to keep Ben and Ben pleads guilty and he did agree and he's gonna go through like short courses to better himself. So I think if it's Ben's first time breaching work policy, he should be given a chance. And because if he get fired and someone else do the same mistake, then they will even be afraid of admitting it because they know the result. They know if I do this, I'm gonna be fired. So some people will decide to keep quiet if they do something wrong just to protect their job instead of coming up.
Yeah, it's an interesting view as well. I see where you're coming from, Connie. It's unsafe to own up to doing something wrong. I guess it depends on what was it that went wrong. But yes, feeling safe to report, feeling safe to walk to your line manager and say, I think I've made a terrible mistake. I want to be able to talk about it. Then the protocols and policies and the advice would come in external. And yeah, the funding body just they know it's happened. They want to know what you did after it happened and the steps along the way. And we've got to have a look at who's the victim in this. So how do they feel about that? And a meeting of the minds. I think the letter of apology will definitely go a long way. I want to circle up, Connie. I want to circle up Cody, and then Lisa, and then up to Awen and Jasmine. This is great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know who it was that said they'd leave, but I would too, because I'd be afraid that if they kept Ben on, he has done it once. There's nothing there to say that he won't do it again. And to who? Sorry, I have a trust issue.
So you have a measure that you need people to meet for you to be able to decide on whether you stay or go. We've all got to stop go with our work and with most of our decisions that we make. I'll stop here. That's the line I cannot cross. And it depends. We're all coming from a different place. So
well, the thing is, though, Ben knew Ben knew before he even did it that it was wrong. So why did he continue? Why did he keep going? Why did he do it knowing full well that he's done wrong? Throughout this whole course, we were talking about privacy and confidentiality. Again, he knew.
Yep. Okay, so Lisa?
I think I have to raise my hand down because I was going to say the same thing as Cody said. Being in the HR department, he knew what he was doing. He knows about the privacy and confidentiality, and also spreading, getting leaking the thing would fall under defamation as well, with regards to Kelly's rights. So I think he was totally he totally knew what would be happening. He wasn't, maybe he was thinking I won't be get caught, but he knew he was doing something wrong. And as the management, especially with regarding confidentiality, I don't think there should be any thing that should be taken lightly, because obviously the trust of the people would be in question. If it was me, I would be really worried to stay in that company, and I totally agree with Michaela.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. Awen, over to you, and then Jasmeet, over to you. And back to you, Cody.
Yes, my opinion also aligned with the others, with the majority. I'm very sorry, I can't keep a person like that, because it affects not only the colleagues, not only the company managing, not only it affects the whole community, and it's a breach of the legislations, the policies, everything. Is just gonna leak information, privacy, and no one knows how much information and documents that he has already leaked out. There's no respect to the privacy of the company and the people. It's actually a huge breach to the company policies and a risk to other people's reaching and going into using the system without legal right to do that. Every organization have their legals and rights and the things that we need to follow. And it's so important that we implement that. And if somebody went and did what he did, of course you have to leave, because you're a risk to the company, to the organization, and to the laws and the compliances. You just mess in everything. And Ben, and I'm 100% sure it's not going to be only Ben, but it's going to be a lot. Yeah, everything is going to go out. And what did he get? He will say to somebody else, the same as Thomas. There's another friend who he will be telling them, oh, I just got a couple of days. And then other people will go copy the same. It's just a mess. I think we'll be happy to let him go and give people lessons and teach them and let them know what are the consequences of this. Thank you.
There's the optics around it. I can see both. That's why we have legal and ethical dilemmas.
Yes.
And what are your responsibilities and your values base? What does the law say? And then I guess the feel around the workers and the general feel. It's a difficult position for management to be in. I want to circle up to Michaela, if I can, and then Jasmeet, I'll come over, and then I'll come back over to you again, Connie. So Michaela.
Yeah, I was just kind of drawing from personal experience. Like, I haven't had this exact scenario happen, but I'm a manager myself, and like often find that I'm an advocate to like execs and things like that for my team. And I just know that this would not fly, and I'd have a lot of uncomfortable people within my team. There'd be like a lot of talk about, no one would feel safe reporting things because it would not be kept confidential. Confidentiality is a huge thing in every single company. If you don't have that trust, it's like you genuinely cannot work safely. Like, it's not fair at all. So I think, everyone makes mistakes, but also everyone knows right from wrong. And that is, like, I think, just basic human rights, especially if you've been trained in HR, and assuming that you have the position, you should be trained to some degree. And I think that, it's completely not acceptable. But I think also other companies would have slightly different standpoints. I just know what my company would feel in this instance.
Yep. Thank you for that. Jasmine.
Yeah, so my view also aligns with everyone else, because as a human point of view, I will empathize with him, and I can tell him good luck for, his future endeavors. But I will not be able to work with a person who I don't trust, who I cannot unintentionally, I can, unintentionally judge that person on a daily basis. Even if I don't want to, I will, judge his every action if he's doing right or wrong. So maybe he should go, and maybe to get a fresh start, he should go and transfer to some other institution. Of course, everyone needs a fresh start. It doesn't mean that he has murdered someone or something like that. But yeah, but I will not be able to, I will be very awkward. It will be, awkward situations if something, arises in the workplace regarding him, even a normal scenario. So I think he should go, definitely.
Okay, great. And we've deliberately left Kelly out of this work group because it's midway through the investigation. There are no findings yet, but based on people thinking the findings are that it did happen and Ben's willingness to step in and accept responsibility, I can see where we are headed with that. I think the role is you must do what is legal and you manage it ethically. So to be compliant, you must follow what the legal requirement is. Would the funding be at risk if the organisation cannot be trusted to keep clients' files confidential, staff as well? Your funding requires you to report that you follow contemporary human resource practices at the bare minimum, and it would be unlawful to access someone's file. So police do it. They go in and they track down ex-partners, and they'll do that for a mate and things like that. That Privacy Act, it has state, territory ramifications and Commonwealth ramifications as well. That is definitely a criminal act. However, his remorse would go a long way towards where the organisation may compassionately and ethically manage that space. But right now, for where we're up to with this group tonight, it's still under investigation. But Ben does appear to be accepting responsibility. That would perhaps go well for Ben in the future, but it may not be enough to keep him in that space. But the willingness to own and accept responsibility, it's up to Kelly whether Kelly accepted that letter of apology or not. But the intention behind trying to fix something that has gone wrong, if Ben owns it, there's a huge gap in people going, I've done nothing wrong. It's a he said, she said situation. That's why your file notes, your participation in this is, I cannot emphasize to you enough, you must document everything as well. And the staff will need to feel safe that management are leading this legally and ethically to be compliant. So Connie, I'll swing up to you and then I'll come over to you, Ruth. And I'm very mindful I've not given you any breaks. So we're going to wrap up in 6 minutes for everybody just to unpack that. And then I'm going to pause the recording, and then I'm going to continue with the project and guide you with that as a resource to have. So Connie, to you.
Yeah, I'm still kind of defending Ben to stay. Because everybody says Ben should go, and which I would understand why everyone doesn't want to work with such kind of partner. But put Ben into your shoe. Assume that you are Ben. You are in this position, and maybe Ben needed to know if Kelly is actually on the wrong. Because Thomas said that Kelly is accusing him, like Kelly's accusing him. So maybe Ben was trying to know the truth. Like he trusted his friend. He trusted that his friend was on the right side. And he has accepted. He has accepted that, yes, I did wrong, taking the files and giving it to my friend. And yeah, so probably I think he should be given another chance, and he's having all the rights of being treated right with all the workers, including the ones that feel that he should be out of the company.
So what do you think Kelly's barrister is going to say about that?
I think it's up to Kelly to decide the apology, because if she decides that, if Kelly decides that she's going to accept the apology, then I think this case will go on a fair trial and the truth will get to be known. But yeah, it's up to Kelly to accept the apology for the case to go on.
That's right. But the apology's got nothing to do with the legal and the ethical. The apology is a personal thing.
Yeah.
And it's remorseful, but management have to make a decision. The other workers need to know that management follow their legal and ethical compliance. I see that as a really proactive thing for Ben to offer. But I would also be mindful how this landed for Ben. I would feel a duty that he's made a mistake, and I would assist him exit as responsibly as I could, but he would be gone. Absolutely. He wouldn't be in the workplace the moment it came on my desk. He would be off on paid leave, and we definitely would be talking and having conversations. And at the end of the investigation, at the outcome, my legal advice would definitely tell me that this is a court matter. And if Kelly's not satisfied with how we handle this, Kelly can come for compensation. And there's not a lot of discussion around it. It's not about Ben and Kelly, the management. The person who is the legal responsible person is the people who sign that funding contract, and the management, and every member of that board or management committee may be legally responsible for paying for Kelly's compensation. If she believes this has damaged her and she can no longer work in that sector, her potential to earn an income has now stopped, because anywhere I go, will I be able to trust anyone if the findings fall that way? Sorry, Ruth. I can tell you what the courts would say. Ruth?
I'll just
please.
make it very brief. I think in the protocols and procedures, they actually just dismiss any breach of confidentiality. So following the protocols and procedures of a workplace would just automatically say that he had go. There would be no ifs or buts, because otherwise you'd be not following your own rules.
Well,
because if you break breach of confidentiality, it's out the door, sort of thing. And that's is actually what's written in your protocol. So really, we're discussing a long story.
Yeah, we can't let them go until we've got the findings of the investigation. However, as a precaution, we need to have Ben not be at work. The optics look wrong. The staff need to see Ben not there, not to be triggered, so that they can return their focus to it. That doesn't mean management won't continue to speak to Ben, but through the proper channels, and refer that over to an external party to do that. Management can handle that sensitively, but I have sat in that space with the commissioner, who are really good to deal with and highly skilled, but they will listen to Ben and they will listen to management, and all they want to know is, what do you want? So I want to know, what does Ben want? Ben sounds like he wants Kelly's forgiveness. At that time, he didn't think about that. He was running with a different mindset. What does Ben want? Ben may think he wants to return there, but I think ultimately Ben doesn't want this to ruin his future career pathway as well. So what do the workers want? The workers will want to feel safe. What's the employer's responsibility? To provide a safe environment for their workers and the resources to be able to do their job. And that includes your policies and procedures. They're not just this big book that we use to keep the door open. We apply them. We must be seen to be applying them, but we can still manage this space for Ben compassionately and within the values of the organisation. And I would have an ongoing sense of responsibility. I could understand it wasn't his intention to harm someone. It was his intention to help someone. That was the only thought that he had at that moment of time. But management can hear that, but they can't support Ben in staying in the role. Sometimes people get promoted and put into a different role somewhere else so that it doesn't have a fallout with the organisation. But if Kelly wanted to take this to court, then absolutely 100% Kelly can go for compensation. How she is treated in this space is very important. Is Kelly at high risk with her mental health? 100%. So we must be seen to be doing it, but we would handle that situation with Ben. Ben, my words would be a little bit more colourful, but it would be very clear, you've made a major mistake, buddy. And this one I can't clean up for you, but I can give you some guidance and some support. But I would probably say, please don't ask me to act as a referee for you, because legally and ethically, my answer would be no, I would not hire him again. Because of the reputational damage, the funding body would be all over me in that case. But Ben can and does go off on stress leave. You cannot touch Ben. So you have to act swiftly and decisively around what are your legal and ethical compliance obligations. So you cannot touch a worker that is off on sick leave. They are completely all the rights. Then if Ben wants to come back to work and the investigation, if it's still going, you cannot sack Ben until he has medical clearance and fit to return to work, and then you have to have that conversation. So there's a process. Heard Millie say following policies and procedures, and yeah, you have to. Other workers may have a view. This is very unfair on you, Ben. You were trying to help out a mate. I would have done that too. And right. So how we manage this, if we don't look after Ben ethically within the values of the company, then the other workers may lose loyalty and trust with us as well. So he made a mistake. People make mistakes, but this is a mistake. You cannot look the other way, because if he would breach the Privacy Act of 1988 for a friend, it means he can be influenced by others rather than influenced by the law. So, but a different kind of thing can then come back from this 100% if we manage it responsibly, but not back into the organisation. So, but you may disagree with that, but I can tell you the court would definitely support Kelly. And I'm not even sure whether the funding body would support that decision if you brought Ben back, if the findings were that. So even when it goes to court and everyone's been found innocent, yeah, like the union can disappear, and so can so can the job can be gone. It can be, you know, Ben's mental health is still a priority for me in this process. It's hard because you know, we're not talking about Thomas, we're only talking about Ben, we're not talking about Kelly. But Ben has rights, and at the very least, he has human rights. But if you were in the management room, you've got to make the call. And if you were in the client room, yeah, you need to be compassionate and look after Ben so that this doesn't define Ben for the rest of his career and even personally as well. And then if you're in the workers, then you need to know that your management have your back and support you, and that you are at arm's length of those discussions. I like the memo. I like the draw attention to the policies and procedures, and here are the links. And I would definitely be sending out a who has authority and what is within the scope of people's roles. But we do performance reviews. We talk about things one-on-one. We can unpack that. And in your one-on-one, I don't know what yours might be like in your organizations if you're working, but in our one-on-one, we ask for what would you like management to know? And we feed that up from the bottom up. So in our training team, I do that with the team, but also in our organization. So we have an employee suggestion box, which is anonymous, but we mostly get, we should have more cake. Sometimes it is, you know, we should be able to have a wellness day. We should have our birthday off. It can be things like that. And some of those suggestions are really good suggestions and we can implement them as well. But there would be some other things as in that if it was found that Ben had done nothing wrong, if the outcome was different, and Thomas had not harassed Kelly, if that's the findings, Ben has still breached the Privacy Act. It's separate to the investigation. It's another matter. Yeah. So thanks everyone. I'm going to pause and I'm going to come back and complete your project. Hi everybody. I just wanted to bring you back. We finished our group discussions. So we'd started off our night. We spoke about what our legal and ethical requirements are as an employee. And then we took our group discussion into the employer's perspective, the legal and ethical requirements. We looked at the stakeholders, perhaps the funding body, some of the other agencies that we work with. We looked at one case that we took from task 2. And in task 2, we selected one person out of that just as a scenario. And we had another group that looked at it from that staff members as the client, but to compassionately work in that space and only have that lens over it. And then we also had another group who looked at it from the peers and the other workers' perspective. So when we're doing this unit, we have to look at it from everyone's viewpoint, not our own. When we're doing an assessment or when we're undertaking our role, we work within the scope of our role, what our authority says we have. There's a stop and go. This bit here, I haven't got authority to do that. I would be working outside the scope of my role. I need to take that to the responsible person. And then if we're not sure about who that is, we would ask. Some organisations will have an organisational chart. So it's really helpful for us to be able to use that and follow the policies and procedures around that. Work on the premise of the policies and procedures keep us within the guidelines. And there's an overarching legal requirement to follow human rights, disabilities, discrimination, Privacy Act, Fair Work Australia. there's quite a few. Your state and territory will have a representative as well. And then we have the Commonwealth laws. Commonwealth trumps state and territory. So that's a federal court that a matter would be taken to. And some matters in the workplace, both legally and ethically, can go to Supreme Court, High Court, even in the appeal process as well. So be aware that when we step into this role, we have a legal contract. We sign it with our employer, and money exchanges hands. So it's a contract and it's legally binding. And then it's not about, do we place blame? It's about, where does the responsibility lie? The ultimate responsibility sits with the employer, who are legally responsible for all of the staff, the safety and well-being of them, all of the clients, the safety and well-being of them, and for the wider community, because it is usually public funds, taxpayer dollars, and that's therefore they answer to the funding bodies and the government as well. So a good organisation with the best of intentions can lose their funding based on somebody acting independently outside of the scope of their role, or working from their opinion. So we do, of course, have opinions, but they may not apply when it comes to something like the legal and ethical framework. So always refer back to that. So I want to have a look quickly about task 3. We did cover that a bit last week. This is our last week on CHCLEG003. And we've brought it to life. No role plays, but I made sure that we did a lot of our practitioner skills in our breakout room. And there's been some really rich discussion, and the wisdom of the group is evident there. And we're sharing that in this recording with those who could attend class and those who had said they couldn't attend. But if you talk to somebody in your network, I know that you've got a very strong networking collaborative connection, and someone wasn't able to come to class, please get them to reach out, and I'll share this. Know that the recording will expire within 28 days. So you'll need to go in and get your templates from your simulated work organisation, which is First Access, and you will use your username, Hader Institute, and your password, Hader 123456. And the overview is, for this one, in task 3, you are required to develop a policy and procedure, and it's called the EEO, and that's an acronym where we cut something short and we give it a label. We in the sector can make an error. It was really good. One of the learners tonight said, what do these things stand for? And yes, equal employment opportunity is what EEO means. So I used other acronyms tonight. I used AOD, which is alcohol and other drugs. I used MH, which is mental health. I used, I sometimes use CS, which is community services, YW, which is youth work. If I'm writing in my file notes, I'll put YP for young person. So, and that's fine when we know, but when there's somebody new and they're learning about it, it can be, I need clarification. So I want to thank that learner for raising that tonight. But P and P's is policy and procedure. So if you're not used to the sector, this can all be like learning a whole new language for you. And I'm mindful of that as well. Just see some reason it's really just not. Oh, yeah, there it is. Sorry. It's might be showing us a little bit of a bar. I just want to see if I can remove that for you. I hope the visuals are better. I haven't unpacked it yet. Let me do that for you. So you'll need these resources, and you'll get them from First Access site, where I just gave you the passcode to get in. You will need these legislations, and you'll need to do your own research. Access to the following acts on the internet. So do a search and do Equal Opportunity, Fair Work, Australian Human Rights Commission. It's listed there because you're expected to use this, and you'll reference them. Any of the supporting documents that go with it, it'll be other policies and procedures that they'll need to see that in your policy and procedure that you're going to create. You're going to get all of your information from the First Access site, plus some of the legislations in your own research. When and where this will be completed in your own time, and it's going to be a written submission that you put forward. And if you get something wrong, it will either be satisfactory or not satisfactory, and some feedback on the gaps, and maybe getting you to just say you're almost there, or you've got these things right, we're just looking for this one extra thing. Please take that on. That's fine. If you get feedback, if it's a role play and it says your role play is great, but can you just do another short recording and fill in the gaps? We're not expecting you to get another person to come back if you've gone and done a great role play. But in your feedback, it will say, great start. Now I just need a part 2 with you, introducing yourself, the unit that you're doing in the task, and your ID. And I want to see a simulated workplace environment for you. So a blank wall is fine, but sitting in the kitchen with the dishes behind you, no. If you are doing AOD, I have had some people record theirs in front of a bar. That wouldn't be what we would be putting in our professional clinic space with someone who is experiencing addictions. So be mindful. What do I see when I'm there? When I watch it back, you will of course watch any of your recordings back, like you watch this recording back as well. So let me just walk you through. There are 2 items to do. One is write the policy and procedure and make sure that it is the equal employment opportunity policy and procedure, and then provide the policy template, which is in your portal. When you go in, it steps it out for you: scope, objectives, company values, list. All of those must be in there. And this is how you're going to tackle it. This is the template like this. So you're going to give it a title. We've given you that. This is what you must do. The document owner, that means the person writing the document. And then approved by senior management and human resources. So that means it's going to be signed off after you present it. So initially you'll write it, it'll be in draft, and then it'll go to senior management, and one of those will be HR, and they're going to test your policy and procedure against the legislation. So when we assess you, we check to see what you've got in there, and is it lawful against the policies and procedures and against what the legislation has. I like to put in, if you're coming from Queensland or some state, there's only one state that does not have psychological safety, and that is part of equal employment opportunity, because it sits under workplace health and safety, and that is Victoria, but it is pending. Otherwise, every other state territory recognises under their workplace health and safety legislation psychological safety in their workplace health and safety. So just make sure that you add in, if you are in Victoria, it's a slightly different protection, not quite as robust, but it's pending. So which means that it can only start the protection from the date that it is actually legislation. So in your portal, it's going to give you scope, and it tells you what it wants. So here it's got 2 things. When you look at this, I want you to be mindful in your assessment, provide an overview of who, and this keyword here, and what. So that means there's 2 parts. Some learners like to go an intro and then who. This is going to apply to. So this will be, for example, this is all of our staff, all of our visitors, all of our service providers on site, our volunteers as well, all permanent, part-time, casual staff, all departments. So who does your equal employment opportunity new policy and procedure apply to? So who is going to be protected by this? And then what the policy covers as well, fairness, equity, as well. So the objectives, and so this is policy goals and aims, two separate things. In your learner's guide, it will guide you there, and of course in your slides and the resources. Value and commitment. This says what First Access values and what it commits. You'll find that on the First Access website. So just keep scrolling down. So there's no limit on those words there. Don't make it too wordy. Good policy and procedure isn't volumes and chapters. It needs to be simple, clear to understand, and pitched so that every staff member, our diverse staff, and our people who only work part-time and casual, people who work remotely, can go to this and check if they are working to the guidelines. So it needs to be written in a way that isn't too legalistic, but it does have strength around that, and it complies. So think about what you're going to write in it. Have a look at another policy and procedure in First Access. It'll give you a guide around how did they write that, and okay, so I need to duplicate it, but I need to write it for this one here, and I want to add in some extra things in there that I have a learning around. They'll have an equal employment opportunity, or an EEO, in the dashboard. Improve on that, add something extra. Some people, the bit that they add extra, highlight that in a different text in a font color. So red or blue comes up clear, yellow does not. Green doesn't even. Pink is pretty hard to read. So I would recommend that red. It'll really pop, and that'll be the area that you wrote in as well. It talks to you there about all of the scope, the guidelines, what training and assessment will apply, policy review and update, related Act standards and regulations, and the document management. So you might say this is version 1, 2025, and if there's any amendments, you might go version 1.2 or 1.1. That means we've had one variation, or it might be 1.2. That means we've changed the original one twice. Okay, so just have a think about that when you go into First Access site. What you write, that will be a different version as well. So we'll go on to second part. There's only 2 that you need to fulfill. So you'll need to send an email to staff about the new policy and procedure, and that you are implementing that in the workplace using First Access email template. And so you go to the First Access site where I showed you how to log in the beginning, and your email is to all staff, and you're going to advise them. And it says, if required, add a note or a written response to accompany your submission. So if you wanted to add some wording around there, you can upload that here where it says click to browse. Do your own thoughts in a Word document, and then when you click on that, it'll say upload in your own device. Or it might be where it has, when you go in your portal, it may have the paperclip where you do an attachment. You might be able to attach it directly from there. But otherwise, where you have here will be you can browse and it'll upload. Make sure you hit save though as well. So your communication will be professional, and in First Access site, legally, they require you to use their documents, and legally they require you to follow their policies and procedures, and they have a policy and procedure on emails. So make sure you complete your email accordingly. Okay, so I will just bring up our next one here. Right, so just circling back now, I've moved us up to the final assessment task in CHCLEG003, and we are on our final week. So there are 4 areas of this assessment for you to do. Let me just see if they've given us, oh, they have, I think, given us an overview. Great. So an overview of this, read this area. The following assessment tasks, it's asking you to again log in. It would be expected with legal and ethical that you need to have access to what First Access is working with. So it says that there are 4 parts to this assessment. Part A, read the scenario and identify what was the breach of compliance and the corrective action to be taken. Tonight, our whole body of work was around 4, task 4, our final one. So you're going to identify what the breach is. And so it's a breach of compliance, meaning it's a breach of the policies and procedures or the legislation, the statutory that overrides everything. And then what are the corrective actions to be taken? Even if the outcome doesn't please everybody, we have our legal requirement. We must take the action. We must identify what is wrong. We cannot ignore it. And then what's the corrective action to turn that around as well? Okay, so just moving over there. Okay. So that's part 1. Part B, research and provide a brief report on legal information concerning privacy, confidentiality, and disclosure of breach identified from the scenario in part A of this. So we give you the scenario, and maintain knowledge of current and emerging legal and ethical issues and framework. Now that's a mouthful. What does it really mean? It just means do some background on this and then give us a brief report on what were the legal informations concerning privacy, and then around confidentiality, and then the disclosure of breach identified in the scenario that we gave you. We worked with the scenario ourselves tonight, and then maintain knowledge of current and emerging legal and ethical issues and the framework we're going to have to work to. We did a lot of that tonight. We went into different groups. We had different lenses over it all, and we needed to make sure that where do we go from here? What's our next step? So it's one thing that a breach has happened. What happens next is a big part around the legal and ethical requirements of an organisation. So I'll just... Okay, so sorry, just had to have a brief break there. So back to part B is the second part of this. Break down your paragraph for your response to this into what are your key areas. So research, that means you've got to go looking and then provide. So you're going to write a brief report on legal information concerning these areas: privacy, confidentiality, and disclosure of breach identified from the part A, the first part of this, and then maintain knowledge of current and emerging legal and ethical issues and framework. So you need to be able to hold that knowledge and demonstrate it, and then move to part C, make recommendations to update the relevant policy document to reflect a legal research was conducted around the breach of compliance and applicable to clients as well as broader community. Part D, you need to communicate the legal research conducted and the recommendations made due to the breaches to other managers, so other stakeholders at First Access. What you need is resources. You'll need to open up a Microsoft Word document or whatever program you use and write and create this on a separate document, and that's an attachment. You will need to think about what is available for you on first access. So you've got to have supporting documents in there that you've got to go to. Some people put the code in and it can struggle finding it. Put in your keywords. So put in information technology, and you're after both policy and procedure. Now, they are two separate items. One talks about what you must do, and the other talks about how you're going to do it. So consider the policy as your overarching guideline and the procedure as the underpinning application and the action. Code of conduct, you'll need both. Your skills development policy and procedure, how am I going to train the staff? So we've got to follow that. And performance management policy and procedure. Tonight I spoke about performance appraisals, even performance improvement plan if someone is getting corrective. So if it wasn't a serious breach and your manager wants you to bring that back inside the guidelines and help you with that, they will formalize even that process. It's referred to, again, an acronym. It's referred to as a PIP. So a performance improvement plan. It's individual. You can have a support worker with you if it's a non-serious breach. If you get pulled into performance appraisals and they're formal and they've identified some areas, it'll usually sit around not hitting the KPIs. A KPI is a key performance indicator. Or it might be absenteeism. It might be that you're lacking some particular skills that the job essentially requires, and your resume and your interview implied that you knew that, and it's reasonable for the employer to go, well, you've applied for it. We said this is what we're looking for. The responsibility sits with us as the worker to be able to perform what we say we can perform. So if we're doing, say, probation, which is people have to be treated fairly in probation, but there's not a lot of security. There is no responsibility at all on management to give you a reason why they're no longer going to continue. Most policies around probation is 6 months in this sector. If someone's not quite there and they see that as just a little bit more around skills development and covering that, and that their particular way is unique to them and you might know how to do it there, it's reasonable to think that they support you and it's ongoing. And by the time you're at the first month, you found your way around. Second month, you've got a bit more knowledge that you're keeping. By the third month, you're progressing towards that really confident underpinning knowledge, but you're only midpoint. Also keep in mind that you are putting them on probation. Do I like how they do things? Do I like how they make people safe? Do I like how they give people a voice and we collaborate and contribute? It is a contract, therefore you are also able to decide, well, do they suit me? And sometimes you will leave inside a probationary period. If it's less than 12 months, legally, you only need to give 1 week's notice. But if you've accrued 1 week's leave, you can say, I would like to leave and I will use my notice. So I'm going to take leave and that will be my 1 week's notice. Make sure that you get the legal framework around how you do these things. So there's a policy and procedure that says exactly what you must have, but their policy and procedure may not be current, may not be reviewed, may not be up to date. Make sure that you go to the Fair Work Australia site. That is where the law sits. And it doesn't matter what the policy and procedure says. If it is not aligned with the legislation, then it's the legislation you go with. And you can ask for free advice there as well. So there's a lot of information on that website. If you're going to be working in a team, know what your rights and responsibilities are. So you'll need to access the Australian privacy principles. The Act is 1988. And then in Part B of that, access your computer, these two policies and procedures. You'll need to find the research report template, and that's provided. You'll need to go to the National Standards for Disability Services, Privacy Act again, and the Australian Privacy Principles, which is referred to as the APP. Part C is the same. So you've got depth in here. There's 4 parts to it. They've just called it A, B, C, and D rather than number that. So access to the recommendation report. So we give you that in a template, the standards you will need, the Privacy Act again for Part C, and then also access to the privacy principles. And Part D, again, research that you did in Part B is relevant, and recommendations that you make in Part C, that goes into this. And you need the email template, and that's available on the First Access website. And you will have used that in the previous task, in task 3, because remember you did the equal employment opportunity one, and then you need to send an email out. So I like to keep templates that I use regularly when I'm studying, and I study like you. So I open up a folder and I call it whatever study or qualification I'm doing. It's an RPL, I call it that RPL. And then for every unit that I need to gather resources or download something, the learner's guide, I drop them into its own folder. I have subfolders in there. It helps you stay organized and compartmentalize what you're working with, so that you don't have to jump on the screen. You can just go to that folder and read that and review it. 40 minutes is a great study time. I recommend that. If you did 40 minutes each day reading, and then maybe having a couple of attempts, you can save your work as you go along. But this one here, it's got 4 tasks. We run it for 3 weeks. So by now in week 3, I would like to think that you had opened up task 1, the quiz, looked at the cases in task 2. You may have started to look around by now in task 3 and 4. Do them sequentially. Task 1 leads into task 2, leads into task 3, leads into task 4, and you're building upon that knowledge. So task 1 is usually quiz or just a list of questions and answers. So you will do this in your own time. So please don't feel that you are behind. But if you've got 21 units to do in 18 months, the math will tell you that you will need to get them done in around 16 weeks, because in your 16 units, very close towards the end, you've got 200 hours of work placement with this qualification when you're ready, but nobody goes on work placement until they're about 50% through, or if they have demonstrated sound knowledge in their assessment, and we start to identify, yes, this learner would be confident. And if someone is ready, you can always make an individual application as well. When you do a unit like CHCLEG003, when you go into work placement, it builds confidence with your host employer where you're going to do your studies. There's a couple of other units, the HLTWHS003. So that's the workplace health and safety. That gives the host employer some confidence. Well, they've got workplace health and safety and they've got legal and ethical. I'm liking that we would be able to go forward here. So if you're missing things like the legal and ethical, they'll hold some concerns because they have a duty of care. over you, and we have a duty of care to make sure we don't send you out too early. But if you're a sector worker, you absolutely, if your work aligns with your assessments for work placement, you can do that in your workplace. Just don't start without that formal acknowledgement. Or if you are a sector worker and you think, I can do this work, I just need to formalise my qualification, then let me know that you would like to apply to RPL your work placement. So a lot of people can, if they are sector workers, RPL. But if you're going to RPL your knowledge, then you will be required to fill in a complete kit for each unit. You will also be, this is legal and ethical compliance around your studies, and we must abide by that. So they're our guidelines. So an RPL every unit, so this has its own workbook. In the workbook, you fill in self-reflection, you fill in evidence that you know that you provide samples of your work, case studies, emails, consent form, referral notices, you de-identify, emails, it might be a minutes from a meeting that you conducted, it may be a performance appraisal that you've done. You must support your claim that you have this knowledge and skill with evidence. It could be things like the 200 hours in time in your pay slips. It could be copies of your timesheets. It may be a letter on your organisation's letterhead, and they will say the learner, our learner here, or you, will have been working full-time from this date, and they are currently working. So that will cover that 200 hours readily for you. So if for some reason there's something missing, your third-party supervisor also has to sign off in that kit. And for every unit you want to RPL, there is a separate kit, and each kit is a standalone. You'll need your resume, you'll need a copy of your position description, you'll need your employment contract. That's for all of the other units. If you're RPLing your work placement, though, that's not quite as extensive. That does require a one-on-one with myself or one of the other assessors. There's two of us who can do that, Cheyenne and myself. Cheyenne is almost there, and he will be joining me in this space, but otherwise we might do, I think this week I'm doing 4 sessions like that. I send you a summary, just a kit, and you answer that. You select one case, and then I send you the questions that I'm going to ask you, and we go into that space, worker to supervisor, and you tell me about how you manage that, and you'll do self-reflection. And so it's relatively easy. It's about 4 pages that you need to do, but it is comprehensive. And then where to from here, how you care for yourself. That's how your workplace RPL will be. And then the other evidence as well from your workplace, your resume and position description, and confirmation that those 200 hours have already taken place, and that the role that you've got is very similar to the assessments that we would ask you to do when you go out on work placement. But if you don't work in the sector, or if you do want to do your work placement, a lot of people get offered work if it's a successful placement. If you want to go somewhere different and try something on for size, then make sure that you start looking around where you would like to do that, and try and individualize that. Please be part of that process. So legally and ethically, we must support you in this space. And then legally, it's mandatory for you to do or provide the evidence of 200 hours in the workplace if you're RPL. So just about everything we do has that legal and ethical compliance when we're on the phone, Some of our calls can be recorded. When we're sending an email, it is a legal document. Your phone messages can be subpoenaed also legally. If you have got a work phone, they can issue to have all of that. If you delete information, they can subpoena and your telco and have all of those retrieved. So what we say and what we do matters in the workplace. We are obligated to meet our responsibilities, and you are absolutely entitled to receive the rights that sit around that as well. So I'm hoping that you found this unit really helpful. We have definitely brought it to life in our process. I just want to stop sharing that for you just for the moment. And I want to just wrap up this unit. Please reach out if you are stuck. Please, I'm going to be asking you to send me an email, or if you have a PR that you're in your networking group, which you're great at, then please let them know to just contact me, and I will send this recording out to you. I'll try and get it sent out to everybody that I can recall. And I'll send a couple of attachments to help you with this as well. So thank you, everyone, and I'll close off for the night, and it's a brand new unit next week. Please reach out, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, just very briefly, just going to share my screen with you around just some of your key skills that you demonstrated tonight as well. So all of the groups went in, identified legal, ethical responsibilities, showed an understanding and use of workplace policies and procedures, which is what this unit required. You are making very good ethical decisions using workplace examples, which you selected. You responded to breaches of legal or ethical. We had some robust discussion around how would we look after that person, but everyone was able to see another perspective, and the law is very clear around it. So you don't have to be reliant on, oh gosh, I hope I make the right decision. We just go straight to the legislation. Fair Work Australia has a very user-friendly website as well, and you can also call and just say, I'm a little bit stuck on this, and they'll provide you that. But a lot of your legislation answers you will find on Fair Work Australia, or go to the other sites that we've recommended. So seek guidance beyond your authority. So even your line manager or your general manager, you may not want to make some of these inquiries in-house. You may want to go externally and find out that information to help you make an informed decision. I want to emphasize that some of our clients can be going through a situation like this. They've had a bad experience, and they may turn to say alcohol and other drugs, prescription or otherwise, over medicating. They may experience a financial hardship because of loss of income, which could mean that they're in housing insecurity as well. The stress can get to people. I'll use COVID as an example. All of the domestic family violence spiked during that period of time because people were under pressure and they couldn't go out, and they already were predisposed to that. This just made it a very dangerous space for people potentially to be harmed. And so make sure that you maintain your own privacy, confidentiality, and your duty of care when you're in that, and that was demonstrated tonight. And then help others understand their obligations. And in summary, we discussed where everyone was coming from, and then I advised you. I didn't give you advice, but I advised you this is what would happen with that scenario, and who is the injured party. We identified that, and what would be the most likely outcome in court. Court is going to make their decision based on the weight of the evidence that has been provided. So diarise everything, document everything. Your memory will fail you, especially after an incident. Make sure that you document it. Even if you're required to give a statement to the police, you legally have the right to say, I would like them to make a variation to my statement. You always have the right to add more, or after recalling, I think I missed something out. That is your right. That doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It's just that you've had time to reflect and some other information has come to the front of your mind to be able to do that. Or you may do some reflection and go, you know, I'm looking through the wrong lens around this. I can see that now. I've actually taken advice. I want to vary my statement, and that can be in the investigation that we used in our scenarios for tonight as well. Someone can definitely change the statement that they gave. That is your legal right to do that. When you go to court, if you get asked, if you say, I do not recall, you will make that judge cranky. If you say it too many times, but you really only get asked questions and you only answer them with a yes or a no. It is the opposing group's job to try and get you out of yes and no. But really every question should be yes or no. So they will use open-ended questions on you to get you to talk and put some context around it. Resist the temptation to be narrative around it. Court is not about your opinion or your view. Court is about the law and the legislation as it's interpreted by that magistrate or that judge. So if they make an error, you get the right to appeal. Okay, so we opened it up around had anyone needed to check or been involved. Some people drew on their own experience. They've been around it or knew of someone around it. What guides in your reflection your decisions at work or in your role? I want you to think back to the session we did tonight around different lenses. And if you thought, I want to be in that group because I've got that lens, then that's your reflective point where you know, I'm actually working from my opinion. If I'm a worker, I really need to put myself in that person's shoes. That is empathy in action. That's non-judgmental, so that we can understand where that person is coming from, whether they have done the right or the wrong thing. How would you respond to a breach of privacy? We discussed that, and that was a good discussion. What does keeping boundaries look like for you? Everyone did that beautifully tonight. Staying in that lens, that was the boundary and the guideline. What would you do if unsure of a legal situation? We had some really good discussion. A lot of it was coming from where we are, but then some who work in the sector shared what would work in their workplace and what would not. And how can you help others to stay compliant? That is modeling that behavior, talking that language, keeping a good professional boundary that's healthy for you and others, your work colleagues. You can develop a friendship. However, they are not your friends. You are friendly and they are friendly back towards you. But a good formula for most practitioners to keep a good balance in your own boundaries and self-care is 90%, I say 95, but 90% is professional and 10% is personal. As an ND, a neurodivergent, 5% is kind of enough for me. So if we're talking about work, I'm absolutely totally there. If we're talking about personal stuff, ask me about my dogs, that's or my garden, that's kind of as far as I might go. Or yeah, the weather. But for me, work is work. And then when I leave work, I don't carry that with me. That's where my boundary is, and that's good professional practices. It's also a requirement for you to do self-care. That is what we call your sector standard. Okay, so look, I hope you found this helpful. I just want to speak to the summary and give you my assessor input around how you actually went with the session, the verbal prompts we used the key descriptors, some of those acronyms, and then we did some real-time reflection prompts and some key skills in the group. So I want to say thank you to everyone for contributing, and anyone who wasn't here tonight, they'll find what the work that you did a really great resource.